podcast. As always, my name is Jeff, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend Paul. How are you this morning?
Yes, I'm very good, Jeff. I'm relatively buoyant, you might say.
Good. Yes, you are quite chipper today,
I am
which
very
is
chipper.
nice.
It's early. I've just had my coffee, so I'm buzzing.
Yeah. How many have you had so far?
3.
Okay. Well, I've had 2, so I'm kind of
Lightweight.
nearly there. Yeah. Well, we've got a special guest with us this morning. We're joined by Esmie Jikiemi-Pearson, who is the writer behind the Target adaptation of The Church on Ruby Road, which you can see here. Look at that. It's lovely. I mean,
beautiful.
Absolutely fantastic. So this
For our
just
audio
came
listeners
out.
who can't see that, describe it, Jeff.
I'll describe it. Well, it's got a very nice slip cover with Ruby and the Doctor dangling off a rope ladder from the Goblin ship. The sun is setting behind them, and then it's got Esme's name at the bottom, proudly emblazoned on the front of the book.
Fantastic.
So hopefully, if you're listening to this and not just watching it on YouTube, you can picture the splendour of that in your mind. It's probably completely different to what it actually looks like, but I tried. So, how are you this morning, Esme?
I'm good. I'm only on my first coffee, so I'm feeling a little bit behind you guys.
You've got to catch up a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I need to go make another one. No, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited for the discussion. And yeah, I just feel very lucky to have been invited on the podcast.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Very kind of you, yeah.
So,
thank you so much.
Let's kick this off by saying welcome to the Hooniverse, and how does it feel to now be involved in it and be a part of it?
It feels amazing. I mean, it's this strange feeling because obviously, you know, I am a massive Doctor Who fan and I've been a fan for years. So it feels very much like I've been a part of the Hooniverse for ages.
Yeah.
But to be now officially like, sort of like, you know, my name on the front of the book cover, having met loads of different people involved in Doctor Who, sort of like within the brand and then within like the wider like fan community has just been amazing because it's always been like a very solo thing for me. I've always just like watched by myself or with my sister or something. So it feels really lovely to just meet loads of different people and kind of be involved properly. So yeah, it's been really great. I'm really enjoying it.
Brilliant.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so, you know, the as you probably know, the Target books are famous and they live on and, you know, in another 20 years there'll be a different print version of this one coming out with your name still on the front, different cover art.
They last forever, don't they?
Yeah.
They keep going on. Brilliant.
Yeah, Paul's a huge fan of the Target books, aren't you?
I am. If my camera was turned around the other way, there would be a bank of Target novels right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I've got the space ready for when I can plug yours into it, like Pride of Place. I've got the shrine. It's all kind of there, already waiting.
I can't believe it. You know, it does feel surreal that people, because somebody came to an event from one of my other books and said, you know, there's like, I think he said 172 books or something for the Target novelizations. How does it feel to be like, you know, the next one on the shelf? And I was like, oh my God, I'd never really thought of it in that way before. But I used to read the Target novelizations when I was really small in a library. And so, yeah, it's just crazy. It's absolutely mind-blowing that mine will be there with the rest now.
Yeah, you really are, you know, going to be immortalised in you know, Who history, and you know it's quite a, you know, an impressive collection to be joining. And Paul, you might be able to correct me, but I think this is the first Target book that's come out in hardback like this, I think. And then there's for its first release anyway.
Of the new series, possibly. In the old days, mate, back in the old 80s and 70s, they used to do them. Excuse me, I won't do that. They used to come out in hardback infrequently, so there were quite a few hardbacks, and they'd usually precede the paperback version by a few months. Ish. Thereabouts. So, but there aren't that many of them, and they're quite well sought after.
So this is quite special, I think, for it to be a hardback.
Definitely,
like
I think certainly of the new series, they've all gone straight to softback, haven't they?
Yeah, because
so
the 60th specials just came out, but they're paperback, aren't they? And I think, is there maybe a paperback version of this one coming out in a couple of months?
I think there will be in a few months.
Yes, I think someone found a listing on Amazon.
Of course they did,
And they were like, it's coming out in
ever resourceful.
It's coming out in June or July, which is usually when the Target wave comes out for the year. So they were like, it must be coming in with that, so maybe we'll get a new cover. So, you know, like, people are excited to see what the cover art will be for it, you know, when the paperback comes out.
Yeah, me too.
So my next question was, were you a Doctor Who fan before you wrote the book? So obviously you said you were. So
we answered that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So what which Doctor was your favourite? Have you got a favourite episode? And
Yeah. So I came to the show at a pretty good point. So I moved to. So I wasn't born in the UK. I was born in Australia because my dad's an Aussie, and the family moved back to London because my mum's like London born and bred.
Right.
Yeah. And it was like an awkward age because I was about 9, so I just started to sort of like really make my friendships get to the end of primary school, and then we had to kind of move for the last year of primary school. So I think it was one Saturday, me and my sister were just miserable because we were like, we've got no friends. What are we gonna do? So, and in Australia, kids don't watch loads of TV, or at least we didn't, because the TV is like crap over there. Right. So we've got like 2 channels. So
Neighbours and Home and Away.
Yeah, that's true. We have a few. We've got a few big hitters, but for kids, it's a bit like when I was younger, the situation wasn't as good. Although we were watching Neighbours occasionally, which my mum. But so he came over and we were sitting around on the Saturday. And we were like, oh, what are we going to watch? So we went on to BBC iPlayer, good old trusty BBC, and we came across this show called Doctor Who, and I was a massive fantasy fan, massive sci-fi fantasy fan already. I'd used to read so many fantasy books as a kid. So yeah, we just watched it and were hooked like straight away. So we came in from what we call season 1, which is Christopher Eccleston season.
Yeah.
And he was just hilarious. Like, we found him so funny and like a bit rude, and just thought he was great. And obviously love Rose and that whole dynamic. And then I think we watched it all the way through till about David Tennant's Regeneration, I think. And I think one of the first ever episodes I would have watched live would have been, I think it was a 2010 Christmas special. I'm pretty sure, with Matt Smith, maybe.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Was that the?
It was his first one with Michael Gambon, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe.
No, yes,
was it that one?
That's it, isn't it?
Yes, I remember that, and I need to go back and watch it. And yeah, that was my first sort of introduction to Doctor Who, and then after that we just watched weekly with everybody else, and then I've kind of like come in and out of it. Watched pretty regularly. I had a bit of a dip at uni, and then now I'm back into it and I'm ready for May, and I'm going to be watching religiously. Me and my boyfriend have watched the specials as soon as they came out, so we're ready to go basically.
Brilliant. So tell us a bit about how the novel came about, and how the job came to you, and what that process was.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I'd done a project with the BBC a few years before, and it just never got off the ground. It was really sad, but I had a great time doing it, and everyone there was really lovely, and it was quite an ambitious project, but I think teams were changing and it just never kind of materialised.
Was that a book as well, or was it something on screen? Or
I'm not sure how much I'm up to say.
Yeah.
It was like it was a multimedia project, so it wasn't just confined to. I think if it had been made, it would have been incredible. But and it might still be made, but it was a very ambitious, wide-scoping project, and it basically just wanted to tell a Doctor Who story over multiple mediums, which was such a cool idea. So I was brought in as like a novel writer, and there was maybe like a video game writer or something like that. Okay. And it was really cool, but it never happened, and I was really sad because I was like, oh, that would have been so cool. I had a great time, and I loved working with Doctor Who because obviously at that point I was a fan, so I was like, oh my god, this is such a dream come true. And I knew that I wanted to work with them in the future, because also it was just a really nice working experience. Like, the whole team is so nice, and I feel like they really carry the ethos of Doctor Who like throughout the whole company, or at least to me.
When was that, Esmie? Was it with Chris Chibnall's era, or when?
It was during Chris Chibnall's era.
Right.
It was about maybe like 3.5 years ago now.
Okay.
3 years ago now. So it was a while, and then I didn't hear anything for a while, and I thought like, oh, my time's been and gone. These things.
It was probably with COVID as well, though, wasn't it? I guess all that kicking off.
Everything was so restricted because of that, and it was still in the days when it was like a writer's room, and we had to take a COVID test every morning before we went in. So it was very deep in the depths of COVID, and then that went quiet, and then a few years later I was contacted again by the books department, so it was by a totally different department, and they were like, we know about your work on this project and we'd love to have you do a novelisation.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I didn't realise what a kind of big deal that was at the time. I was just kind of like, oh yeah, sign me up. Like immediately. I was like, of course I want to do that.
Which is probably quite good in a way, because if you had realised maybe, and the pressure suddenly, you know, freak out about it. So, you know.
Exactly. I only realised sort of how... because as a fan of the show, I've only ever really been a fan of the show. I'm not a big podcast listener in any way, so I'm not that familiar with the Big Finish episodes. And I read the novelizations, but when I was younger, so it's not something I've done much anymore. So I kind of, I just didn't really have that awareness. I was just sort of really happy to be there, like very much like, oh, I can't wait to like put my own spin on it and all that kind of stuff. But after it's come out now, I've realised how excited people are for it, which is just amazing. But yeah, something I'm glad I didn't have that full knowledge of before I went in, because I think I would have found the pressure get me quite a lot. But yeah, then they were like, do you want to write a novelisation? I said, yes, of course. Then a few more months went by and I had no idea what episode it was going to be. And then they sort of told me, and I got the script and I watched the episode all within a very quick succession. So I think they like to keep info back till like the last moment. And it was just an amazing experience. Like, I had a very surreal moment when I got the script and I saw like The Church on Ruby Road by Russell T Davies, and right under his name it said like special novelisation script for Esmie Jikiemi-Pearson. I was like, wow. Oh my god, this is great.
hope you got a copy of that.
yeah. I've got it on my laptop because they didn't give me a physical one, and it has like huge watermarks like splashed all over it. It was quite funny because it's got a huge watermark with my name on it. And at first I was like, wow, that's so cool. And then I realised, no, this is such a threat. It's so if I share it with anyone else, we know exactly who did that.
Well, did you ever hear that Samuel L. Jackson left his Avengers script on a train or something?
No, he didn't.
And it had his name, you know, written across it the way yours is.
Yeah.
And he got an absolute roasting from them. And subsequently, I think all scripts are, you know, watermarked, they're done digitally, and there's been videos of like Tom Holland burning his script when he's read it and stuff to, you know, like I can't leak it, you know, it's gone. So
Tom Holland's the worst for that though, isn't he? For dropping spoilers and interviews and things.
He is, isn't he? Yeah. him and Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo is pretty bad as well. Yeah. So it must be quite not intimidating as such, but when you see your name on there and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, I really have to be careful with this. And we had a little sort of taste recently. We did some stuff for Jo Martin and one of her action figure, and we shot that back in November, and we had to keep it quiet since then. You know, so you see people online saying, "Oh, you know, where's the Fugitive Doctor figure and stuff?" Yeah, that one, and you're like,
"It's amazing." Love that.
Well, we know it's coming, but we can't say anything. So you know, it's been.
And you're bursting to tell people because you know they'd be so happy and like.
That's it. Yeah. And so when you see people, you know, miserable that it's not coming, and you're like, I want to tell you, I'm not allowed yet. Just wait.
Could you tell your immediate family? Could you let them in?
I'm not sure if I was allowed, but I did. I was like, they have to know, and they were really happy for me. Also, to know why I was suddenly like, just like rewatching all of Doctor Who like a crazy person.
Going on a bender for it.
It's like getting in the zone, getting a feel for the style and the pace and everything else.
To be honest, I don't think they would have batted an eye. Even, if I was like, getting through a good few episodes a night, they would have been like, okay.
New hobby. New hobby.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to the book in a second, but how did your involvement with Chris's time on the show come about? Because we know, like, we spoke to Ella Road, who was a playwright, and he was quite interested in kind of new voices and new writers. So how did that happen for you?
So with that, I'm not entirely sure, but I was told that the way that they became aware of me, basically I'll show you the front cover. So I've got my own book.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that.
We've got some questions for that, but you got a good shout out for it in early.
I know it's coming. This character Obi here, he's actually a time traveler character, and he's like in a queer relationship, and he's sort of very much inspired by my love of Doctor Who, and kind of like this, just the idea of time travel has just obsessed me ever since I watched Doctor Who. So when I wrote my own book, I was like, I know I want a sort of time traveling character. And his version of time travel works very differently to Doctor Who. It's got way more like limitations on it, and more sort of like it's more of a system, I guess, than the vehicle being like a time machine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's kind of like, and ever since I watched Sex Education, I've always thought there's two actors, there's Ncuti Gatwa and Papa Essayju, and I've always thought those two would be perfect to play my time traveler. And so when Ncuti Gatwa's casting was announced, I had a moment of just like, are you in my brain right now? Are you like, have you actually read my mind? And so I wonder if, you know, there had been talks about casting the Doctor sort of like more diversely, or like breaking the mold with that, and then obviously my book is so nichely perfect for that sort of like vibe, so I kind of think maybe they'd become aware of me through that, and also just because in the UK, unfortunately, the science fiction and fantasy scene is still very much like lagging with like new voices, especially of like you know, like women, black women especially. I think there's probably about 4 or 5 in the whole of the UK who are like traditionally publishing speculative fiction, which is, you know, it's amazing that it's kind of like getting a bit more traction now, but it's very slow going. So I think it might honestly have been a case of like, who's writing in this genre? There was 3 people. Okay, who's writing time travel specifically? There was one person, and it was me. So, you know, in that sense, I guess it's a lesson in really following what you want to write about and not put it in a box, because it can really pay off. But I think it was kind of, that was the pipeline to sort of getting me into Doctor Who.
Right, okay, brilliant. I
was looking at some of the blurb for Principle of Moments, and there's a brilliant line on the sale page which says Star Wars meets Doctor Who meets Jane Austen in an epic sci-fi fantasy adventure unlike anything you've seen before. And then at the top of it, there's a little thing from Ben Aranovich, who was a Doctor Who writer, who says it's my favourite kind of grand space opera. And I'm looking forward to it.
I was going to say it's out now, isn't it? I read the blurb as well, and I thought, that sounds kind of right up my street. So have to get a copy of that.
I think Doctor Who fans would find a lot to like in there, because it was written by a Doctor Who fan, so it's definitely got a lot of call outs to the show. And also, I think the storytelling of Doctor Who informed so much of my I guess even just like my moral code and what sort of will make it into my book. Just like, you know, I always say it's about, you know, the power of love, which I'm taking that back. I'm reclaiming that phrase.
You're going to own it.
As a legitimate phrase that writers can say. Because I think if you really go down into the heart of Doctor Who, I think it is a lot about the power of love, of course.
Yeah, so. Well, and particularly with, you know, the 13th Doctor, that was, especially in Series 11, that was a really big theme. I was playing Magic card game the other night, and one of the cards had a quote from Demons of the Punjab on it, which was you know, how love and hope are very similar. So you're right, you know, that and kind of kindness and hope and optimism is such a massive part of the character, and you know, essentially helping people and being kind, and
exactly.
I think it's really kind of forefront for the character.
I totally agree.
So we'll come back to your book shortly, but I wondered, with Ruby Road, when did you first get to read the script, and did you get to see the episode, you know, in rough or finished, or, you know, how did it all work? You know, did you like, you know, did you have 6 months to write it, or did they say here's the episode and it goes out in you know, in a month and you've got to write your book? You know, how was that process?
So I got the script in around. It was in the summer. I can't quite remember which month it was. I think it was probably late-ish summer. It would have been around late summer, because I signed the contract in about July. So read the script, got that quite quickly after everything was sort of finalised. Amazing script. Just like as soon as I'd read the opening, sort of no word of a lie, like as soon as I read the opening 3 pages, I was like, we're in for such a treat right now. I got full chills sitting in prep. It was so good. And then I read the whole script, and then very quickly was brought in to watch the episode.
Because I guess it was all shot by then, wasn't it?
Well, this is the thing. So the whole episode was shot. None of the special effects were completed, or they were very rough drafts. So like the first shot of the Goblin ship in the show, when you watch it, it's like this magnificent flying alien craft. In the when I watched it, it was like a black box going like across the sky.
Brilliant.
And the brand manager, James, who was helping me with the episode, he kind of went, oh, well, just imagine it's, just as it is in the script. I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Did they show you concept boards, drawings, and anything like that?
No, I honestly got very little information.
Wow.
Everyone was available for me to ask questions too, but I really had to kind of like ask the question and get clarification and say, what about this and what about this? Even the sonic screwdriver, I didn't get real good pictures of it until very, very late in the process. I'd finished the whole book by the point that I saw pictures of it. And there was another scene, so I don't know how many people know this, but the snowman scene where the big snowman's up in the
Yes,
building,
it was shot later, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's about to fall. It was shot later, and so added to the script later. So then my whole draft was done by the point that was shot and written, and I was like, oh, like sort of got, dust my hands with that. That was great. And then I get this frantic email going, there's another scene, there's a new script. Haven't you seen the new script yet? And I was like, no, it hasn't been sent to me. So then I had to go and find the new script and fix the draft and send it back in. And it's really weird writing for Doctor Who, or just like doing the adaptation from TV or script to novelization, because a lot of the characters don't have names, they just wouldn't have names. They'd be like the young policeman or like the woman with the pram or something, but in the in text that creates too much distance between the characters. I'm constantly referring to them by sort of like this, like the young policeman said this or the mother said this. It's a bit odd. So then we had to sort of frantically go through all the channels to be like, do these people have names? Can we make up names for them? Like, what's going on? And I think they did get named eventually. And so that was really interesting.
It's a bit of a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and I thought it was so funny because despite knowing that Doctor Who's not the most, it's never been the most high-tech CGI show, although it did get to being that way in recent seasons, I was still so, I found it so funny how they do the effects for small things. So, like, in one scene, like, someone's cup gets moved by, like,
yeah.
And it's just like a person with a stick going like...
That's brilliant. I love that.
Isn't it great? Like, it feels so Doctor Who that they would have such a simple solution for something that's so clever.
Yeah, the simplest solution is the best way sometimes,
Exactly. So that was really that was just hilarious to watch. And then all the goblins. I think they'd filmed some of it by that time, but they hadn't really enhanced it, so it looked a bit funny. But it was just great. I love seeing a sort of behind the scenes. I had a great time watching that.
So we've got a question from Giltster on Twitter, and he had two. So when you adapt an episode, what draft of the script did you get? But how flexible were the BBC in allowing you to add new scenes or character moments? So you kind of talked about it there with the names and stuff. So were you able to kind of embellish things and kind of enrich stuff? Because that's one of the things of the Target novels that there's more than we see on screen quite often, and people's inner thoughts and stuff like that. So how much kind of leeway did you have with that?
On this episode, I did not have loads of leeway. They did really want me to stick to the script. I also wasn't fully aware of how much people like it when you digress from the script. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I've got to really stick to the script because I don't want to go like too off-piste. But within that, I managed to add like a few of my own little bits and pieces here. My favourite thing that I managed to get through, which no one sort of had anything to say about, was there's a tiny little paragraph talking about Ruby's adopted grandmother Cherry and her sort of history about how like her childhood.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, because I didn't get a biography for the characters, so I just thought, I wonder what her life was like. And writing those characters actually meant a lot to me because my own grandmother was a Jamaican sort of like immigrant to the UK, and she became like a midwife and a nurse. And so I kind of wanted to use a little bit of her story to embellish Cherry's story, and I found that just so like it just gave me all the good feelings to be able to put that in Doctor Who. And so I just sort of cast her, I guess, as a member of the Windrush generation who'd come to this country and really helped to build it up. And now she's sort of she gets to sit in bed and be in her old granny
and demand her tea.
I thought it was fantastic actually, and there are, I think that's probably the biggest touch that I can kind of spot having read through it. There are some nice moments again, and it is that, you know, between the characters you have, there's a very brief moment on the Doctor's insight as well when they're talking about the coincidence and everything else, and how the Doctor thinking, foolish, I shouldn't have said that. Why did I say that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And which we don't get on screen, so it kind of just gives an additional layer of energy to that scene. And going back to Cherry, you know, I love that because, you know, there's so much in that relationship, and those tiny little touches, just a little bit more detail, just bring the characters to life, and it makes the contrast when, you know, when things go south and we get the alternative sort of timeline kicking in, and you describe Cherry's face now as full of lines, but different lines. Instead of the laughter crows lines, they're frowns, you know, of a different life experience, one that's been harder and harsher. I love that. I thought it was fantastic.
I mean, when I first read that section in the script of how, you know, the crack in the ceiling and Ruby being taken led to a whole different turn of events, I was tearing up. Like, that was so sad. And when I just thought, God, like, Doctor Who is so back. Like, this is so good. Like, I was so genuinely moved and upset by it. And then to watch the performances on the screen, I was just like, oh my gosh. I think all three actors of Ncuti and then the actor of Carla and Cherry, they played it so well, and I was just devastated watching it. And I got the sense that viewers would be devastated watching it while I was reading the script and from the episode that I saw. And so I was just like, God, I really need to make sure that I'm nailing this emotional sort of beat in the story, because it was just so, like, that is so serious. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes as a writer, I can be quite lighthearted and it's more about the fun adventure. But there are some things I think scenes in like a story that sort of epitomised the whole story. And I think it was that scene for me where it was just like, you know, look at the joy that Ruby's brought to their lives and how she's like changed their lives, and by them sort of like loving somebody, they've loved life. And I don't know, it was just so beautiful. So I really wanted to capture that sense of loss by Ruby being gone.
Yeah, that moment in the episode when the crack starts running through the ceiling, and, you know, the colour grading changes on it, and everyone's kind of, you know, demeanour changes and the performances and stuff. You're right. I can imagine reading it and thinking what it would be like, and then when, you know, when you see it, it does actually hit quite hard, and it's really effective to show, you know, what Ruby brought to their life and things. It's a brilliant section of it.
Yeah,
so good.
There's a part I was trying to find here. I think it's in here somewhere, sort of towards the end of the novel, without giving away any kind of spoilers. But again, there's a really nice insight into Carla and the Doctor kind of observing her and saying, you know, because this isn't actually your life. You know, this isn't you, and he can sense the tragedy of that, and it makes the stakes seem even higher because the Doctor has to fix this. You know, it's not just about Ruby. Yes, she's the crucial part of it, but it's about this whole family now.
And I love that he was the only one who knew what had happened. Like, they obviously both had this sense of loss. I think in the script it was something like, I'm not sure, like I wrote, like, she didn't even know what she had lost, or she didn't even know what she was grieving, but they were grieving, like, it was very obvious. And I loved that sense of personal responsibility for the Doctor. And I wonder if that's, I don't know, this isn't like insider knowledge or anything. Like, I wonder if that's going to be a theme for him this season, is kind of like taking on personal responsibility for the damage that he causes to sort of like the companions and their families and stuff. Because he does have a moment, I think, outside the house that he's not sure if he should go back in after he leaves to save Davina McCall, which was amazing. And he's sort of thinking like, I can't remember if he says it in the show or if it got cut or if it was in the script, but I think it was definitely a moment where he was like, I think he says like, maybe I'm the bad luck, and Mrs. Flood says like, oh, what's wrong with you? And he says like, what if I'm the bad luck, or what if
that is in it, I think. I think so. That's
I watched it again after I read the book last night to see if there were many differences. I mean, you're right, it does follow closely everything that happens, and then just has these few little moments where we just get a little bit more depth, a little bit more character, as I say, which kind of adds to the stakes. But it's sorry, Jeffy, I interrupted you. What
no, it's on. I was going to say, Esmie, I wonder if you might be right there, because in the 60th specials, the toy maker did all the stuff with the puppets and all the companions and the flux and all that damage, and then obviously Shooty's Doctor was quite prominently referenced being adopted and stuff like that. And so I wonder if there's a conscious drive to try and sort of atone for the things that have happened to past companions, and even though that's not sort of directly the Doctor's fault, is a bit of a kind of guilt with it, maybe.
Well, there's an accountability, perhaps, which I think is what you're getting at, isn't it, Esmie? So that there is
taking a bit of responsibility, because I definitely have felt like, I think it's been sort of like explored a bit before, and especially in the specials that was like a big theme, but just kind of like, you can't just take these people out of their lives and show them the universe and then dump them back home. I feel like that's a very recurring theme, so I wonder if we'll finally see it sort of be him have like a very strong awareness of it throughout the adventure rather than just at the end.
And be part of that narrative. It's quite interesting when you look at the Doctor's character over the last few years, certainly since Jodie came on, and we got a much more sort of compassionate Doctor compared to the spiky 12th Doctor. Who needed flashcards to tell him how to emotionally respond to people. So and then we saw that kind of continued with the 14th Doctor, even though it's short-lived. We saw a much more introspective take on the Doctor. He seemed to be much more questioning about himself. So it was his identity then. Who am I? And those three specials, I watched them again quite recently, and it kind of occurred to me that one recurring theme throughout all of them is that question of identity. Not just the Doctor asking himself, but in the Star Beast we have Rose, becoming finally complete. She knows who she is now, and is loud and proud and brilliant and amazing. And Donna as well. She has that whole thing. So everybody's in a nice place. And then in the Wild Blue Yonder, we get this whole thing about perhaps the subconscious side of personality, and it's an exploration of that kind of Jungian sort of conflict between the conscious and the subconscious. And then in The Giggle we get the bi-regeneration, the fact you can be multiple people, multiple personalities almost. The Doctor having that healing process and then being able to sort of continue. I think it's a wonderful little trilogy that just explores different aspects of identity whilst wrapping up in an adventure. And then by the time we get to the Church on Ruby Road, we have a Doctor who is still has the compassionate side that we saw with Jodie's 13th Doctor, has been through all that kind of identity, not crisis, but understanding and realisation. And we see a Doctor with tears flowing down his eyes quite a few times in that story. And again, you get that in the novel with a little bit more understanding of why that is, which I love. It's fantastic. Sorry, that was me on a soapbox there. I didn't realise I was going to go on like that.
I could have listened to that for ages. That was so well explained. And thought out. No, I love that. Do you know what? I think Doctor Who is such a great show because there's like you could really talk about that for hours. Like just go into all of the different like themes that they explore and like touch on, and it's just so like such a rich like piece of media for like thinking about so many different things. So that's
what sci-fi and fantasy is, isn't it? I mean, I've been reading sci-fi and fantasy, again, like you, since a really early age. Old stuff and modern stuff, new stuff, independent stuff, mass published stuff. I soak it all up as much as I can, and it does annoy me when I hear people with a very elitist kind of perspective on things say, well, science fiction, it's not really literature, is it? But it's so important, and it's the only genre which allows us to understand certain aspects and topics and things that go on in our lives and in society from a perspective that shines such a bright spotlight on them that it does force us to question things. Even in realms of literature, when you look at things that have looked at those questions, look at things like Salman Rushdie and Jean Rhys Davis, anyway, various people. They do it by using what they call magic realism, but really it's fantasy, right?
Fantasy,
or it's it's borderline sci-fi, and it's like they have to dive into that genre or pull elements from it in order to shine that spotlight, But so it does annoy me sometimes.
No, it really annoys me as well. But I think I'm trying to change the narrative and have superiority over them. I'm like, do you know what? I get to like think about the big questions of life, and I get to have fun at the same time.
Exactly.
That's the thing with sci-fi, isn't it? All these big questions and themes and things that get wrapped up in cool robots and aliens and stuff.
Exactly. And that's the surface detail, which we love.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what drew me to things like Star Wars, back in the day. But when you get older, when you get older, I think even when you're a young age, it sort of opens your mind and shows you horizons and perspectives and voices, with an authenticity to them, and that you might not have otherwise seen, because you can get thrown into this one single channel of everything that reinforces who you are or what you want to be or what your family tell you that you ought to be, and live your life this way and be that person. But actually, no, you read stuff and it opens it all up, and you see different things, and you become I think, a better person for it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Sorry, another soapbox in. I'm going to shut up now. Let's just hand over to Jeff.
Well, I don't really know how to follow that, so...
No, well, I'll tell you what, actually. Can we just delve into... Because I was looking at your bio, Esmie, and obviously you've done a lot of stuff in literature, classical studies, and, what was your kind of take on uni when you went through all that?
I loved uni. So my degree was English literature and classics. And I've said this so many times, while I've been chatting about the Principle of Moments and other things. But I think so many, again, of the classics, like properly prestigious literature that so many people would sort of consider to be very untouchable and, very serious. I'm like, it's all fantasy. It's all fantasy. Like, one of the things I love doing, which annoys people, is calling the big epic poems like the Aeneid and the Iliad and stuff like fantasy books. Because they are. They actually are. Like, they're and you know what? They're these sprawling epic fantasy stories.
Yeah, they're like space opera.
Yeah, about heroes and gods and
monsters,
mythical,
titans, and
exactly, like these creatures. And so that's, I think, when I really think about it, the reason that I love the classics and the reason that I love fantasy are the same reason, and it's because they explore what it means to be human and what it means to live in the world, but in massively elevated settings. So
and like looking at Doctor Who, it's all really heightened and fantastical and all that, but none of that really means anything if you can't identify with it and relate to it and things. And
exactly.
I know people who say, Doctor Who's just running about on a spaceship. Well, that's a part of it, but if I didn't care about the Doctor or Yaz or Rose or whoever, none of that stuff really means anything. It's so surface to that spaceship exploding, that looks cool. That's it.
That's it. That's it.
And it's the same. Like looking at a lot of films, and you can see why some stuff endures and has the audience that it does. I always say the Transformers films. Yeah, robots fighting each other is great, but once you've seen one, you've seen it all. And it just doesn't mean anything past that, does it? Because there's not enough humanity within it, and that's exactly why this kind of stuff is so good.
It is. And I recently rewatched the first Alien movie recently, and I think that's just such a perfect example of what you're talking about, because it's got these huge set pieces and like crazy alien prosthetic creatures. But if you didn't care about the main characters and the people on board the ship, it wouldn't be as scary. And it's, I think for me, the last scene where she's in the spaceship and you think she's got away and the alien's there.
Yeah, it comes out like from the pipes, doesn't it?
Yeah, and do you know what? It wasn't, when I was thinking, we were watching Friends and we weren't going, God, this alien looks great. We were thinking like, this girl deserves a break. Let her get like she's done her time. Let her get to sleep, please.
And that's why Ellen Ripley, for example, has endured, because she's just like us. She's just a person. She's a mum. And like adding all that stuff into the second film, I think it's more so in the director's cut than the regular release. But it enriches the character and makes her more relatable and things. And you're exactly right. The alien is cool, but you watch a horror film and someone's getting sliced up and stuff. Oh yeah, the gore. Oh, it's brilliant. But if you don't care about the person that is in jeopardy, and Ripley was such a great character, and also spinning it on its head a little bit to make her the kind of the final girl, that survives there, because that didn't often happen in sci-fi. I like Buffy a lot, and that was all born out of what if the final girl turned around and was the one who could kick ass, in it. And when they were writing the scripts of the show on that. It was always what's the character, emotion, what's the drama this week, figure that out, and then say, right, well, what's the monster manifestation of that? And that was how it was done, and that's why something like that is, relatable, because it's about people who happen to stake vampires and, will fight aliens on a spaceship or, whatever it might be, So, I love it as well. It's great.
So good.
Yeah, I love alien films. I think they're fantastic. It's such good stuff. We're going to ask you some questions about this in a second. So, sorry, Jeff, go on, carry on.
I was going to ask you if you got to visit the set and meet Shooty or anyone at any point.
No.
Ah.
I would have loved to do that.
I would have added that in the contract.
Yeah, next time I'll be like, I get to shake his hand, or I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
No, I would have loved to do that. I mean, I think Shooty and Millie Gibson, they're both amazing, and I think they just complement each other so well on screen, and I feel like they've got a great relationship, and I would have loved to meet them. The one thing that I did get to do was back in the project before this one, it was in Cardiff, so I got to visit Jodie's Tardis.
Oh, amazing!
And I've got a full picture of me in the Tardis, and it was so cool.
Brilliant.
There was a few of us there, and we were playing with the console. It was right before. It was right after they'd finished filming her final season, so. They were tearing it down. They said, they were like, this is kind of... And I was like, what do you mean you don't keep them? They were like, you can't keep them, all of them. I was like, what?
Can't destroy it.
It's really sad. I remember watching a time-lapse of Capaldi's TARDIS being dismantled, and then I've seen bits of Jodie's, appearing, people from the crew have got bits of it, like Ray Holman, the costume designer, he's got one of the... sort of roundel things in his garden, and then bits have appeared on eBay, and
spinning TARDIS.
Well, when we met Chris Chibnall, he had one of the spinning TARDISes, and that all this stuff gets dismantled and things, but it still it does. You got this attachment to it.
Was it?
Yeah. And then the other thing I got to do was they took us to the props warehouse in Cardiff, which is literally a huge shipping container. And it's just full of every single Doctor Who prop and costume that's ever been made. And it was literally to the point where you're trying to get through somewhere, and you're having to really squeeze through the hallways that have been encroached upon by all the things. So I've got a selfie with the face of Bo.
Brilliant.
Which is so good. And I've got the one that I loved was that I got to try on Martha's black jacket that she wears.
Oh yeah.
And so I've got to wear that, which was, I was like, oh my god, are you sure I can even touch this?
Yeah, that's the worry of ripping it.
When you... Suddenly the arms come off, and there were Cybermen heads on shelves, and I think, what else was there? There was David Tennant's full costume was just in a dust bag, and they were like, oh, they took it out. They were like, yep, this is his. Put it back, and we were like, oh. It was so cool. I loved it. So that was really, really amazing.
That's brilliant.
Experience. But yeah, that's the closest I've ever got to meeting the cast or anything.
It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah,
it was almost better. I was like, I feel like I'm meeting all the villains instead.
Yeah, that's fun, isn't it? Yeah, that's really good.
Do you have a favourite Doctor Who monster?
Doctor Who monster. Do you know what? I recently rewatched the Kerry Mulligan's Weeping Angels episode.
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah.
And I literally was my youngest. I've got a younger sister, and she when me and my sister were first watching it, my youngest sister was 1, so she was not allowed into the room.
Not allowed.
Yeah, no babies allowed. And she's sort of been watching over my shoulder a bit while I've been watching the episodes again. And we were both sat there bawling our eyes out at this episode, which I hadn't rewatched in ages.
Yeah.
And it was just it was just such a classic. It upon rewatching it went straight into my top episodes of all time because it was just so good. And she's she's 14 and very skeptical of everything, and she was like, that was so good. At points in the episode she would literally turn to me with her jaw just open, being like, I can't believe they did that, I can't believe that just happened. And I had to explain to her the whole thing about how they'll send you back in time, and there's no way to come back. She's like, how is she going to get back? I was like, she's not. Like,
that's it. Yeah, done. Yeah.
She couldn't believe it, and it was so fun to watch Doctor Who through fresh eyes. So I think Weeping Angels would be definitely up there, and I think the Matt Smith Weeping Angels episode.
Oh, it's a banger! It's so good.
It's one of my favourites.
And that is almost like it's quite a good example of how Doctor Who is flexible as a show, you know, creatively, because it essentially becomes Aliens, you know, with Weeping Angels in the caves and stuff, and then, you know, when Jodie has her Weeping Angels episode in Flux, it's like a, you know, Hammer horror type thing, you know, and really pushing that side of them as well, you know, and
so versatile.
And then, you know, you look at Church on Ruby Road, it's a labyrinth inspired, you know, real fantasy type thing with goblins and stuff, and you know, completely different to The Giggle or, you know, Wild Blue Yonder, which were only, you know, 2 episodes previous to it. It's you know, we've said this before, haven't we, Paul? But you could just almost do anything within it. I think there's a way to, you know, there'd be an explanation for anything. You know, if the rumoured musical episode happens, you know, there'll be a believable explanation for that happening in it. You know.
Do you know one thing I love about Doctor Who is that the showrunners and the writers, like, they trust the audience so much. Like, I think they do put a lot of trust in us to sort of like roll with it and accept it, because I think one thing that is frustrating as a writer now, especially just trying to, like, you know, at the beginning of my career, trying to push boundaries and stuff, is that publishers or you know, people, they really don't have much trust in the audience to kind of like roll with weird stuff.
I can see that.
Yeah, and you're kind of suggesting things, and it's like, okay, fine, but is there an example of when this has worked before, multiple times, or is this, you know, what's the inspiration, what's the da-da-da-da-da, and it's kind of like, unless it's similar to like 5 other books coming out in the same year, it can be hard to get it approved. And so I think it's such a gift that Doctor Who is so established and has such a open-minded fan base that you can really push boundaries and just kind of like throw anything at them like a challenge, and they'll just take it and be like, you know, sometimes people don't like it and they'll say that, but overall it's
at least they tried. It's better to, you know, to give it a go and, you know, fall slightly short. But that's really interesting what you said, because I think you see that within, you know, like the Marvel films, for example. You know, Eternals is a beautiful, weird little film, but they tried something different there, and you know, the sort of you didn't like it. The normal fans, you know, they didn't like it particularly, but actually over time, people started to realise, actually, you know, this is a good film, and it does something a little bit different within it. You know,
it tries,
you know, and I think
or fails is down to your own personal.
Do you know what I think the interesting thing about that movie is that I worried about it, because I felt like. I worried for the director, because I felt she was set up a bit, because she's such a phenomenal director. But then to go into a mega corporation filmmaking, it's like she would have come up against the same struggles that I'm coming up against, which is like, I've got this visionary idea, or I've got this incredible pushing the boat out idea, something that's never been done before, and then it's just got to go through layer and layer and layer and layer of checks and balances and execs, and I don't know about that doesn't align with the Marvel brand, and it's like, okay, like the brand, like what's the best way to tell this story?
Exactly.
I feel like that one of the best things about Doctor Who is that, you know, they are willing to kind of like let the showrunner or the writer kind of like go a bit crazy with it.
I think that's good. You know, I love the Marvel films. You know, I always read Marvel comics and stuff, but I do think there's an element of playing it safe sometimes, because of a fear of, you know, something not hitting and you know, and disappointing the audience. But I think it's got to a point now where people should be able to accept that not every film or show is going to be made for them.
Yes.
You know, so She-Hulk is aimed at a female audience. You know, Echo is aimed at a certain type of audience as well.
My daughter loves
you
Echo.
Echo's brilliant.
Loves
you
it.
know.
Absolutely.
But you know, when you see people online moaning about it, and you know all that sort of stuff, you think, well, it can't all be made for you.
But the moaners tend to be a certain type, though.
But that's
you know,
I didn't want to say it, but you know,
they have they vote a certain way.
Yeah.
They all say the same kind of things. They're all. I'm not going to go too much. We know who they are, basically.
Yeah. And it's the creative shouldn't let people like that kind of, you know, dictate things. And I think Marvel are now getting to try a few things and kind of say, screw them, you know, we're going to do what we feel. And also, like you said about, like, you know, the corporate layers and stuff, you know, I won't go into it, but there was stuff within Marvel where, you know, the higher ups didn't want Black Panther to be made because they didn't believe that the toys would sell, you know, and then, you know, Kevin Feige, who's in charge, he was like, fuck that, and he got the control back, and then they made it, and Captain Marvel and proved that there would be an audience for stuff like that.
Exactly, because the craziest thing is that these films and these more daring projects have a really high success rate, and often what I always say is that if you're going to do something different, you've got to like say it with your chest and just do it. You've got to like go all out, because then it will oftentimes end up performing better than your like bog standard Marvel movie. It will end up just because people recognize it. They're like, whoa! It's like that feeling of like the first time I saw Into the Spider-Verse in the cinema, and I just felt like my hair was blown back by everything I was seeing on screen. Mind blown by every single frame and storyline and choice that they made. And if they'd stuck to, you know, the usual rules of animation, or even just the unspoken rules of like, you can't have a black Spider-Man or something, we would have never had that film.
No, and they're amazing.
One of the best films made in the last, you know, 50 years. So I just feel like it's such a shame when they let those voices win, because that's not any way to sort of go about making good art.
No, it's not.
Agreed. And I think the good thing about Doctor Who, like you're saying, it provides a vehicle almost of safety for the corporates, right? Because the corporates can see that Doctor Who on its bedrock level is successful. So really within that, you can kind of build what you want and say, well, okay, so if this doesn't fail, you know, if this fails, whatever, which it won't, secretly, we know that. But, you know, you've at least got this layer of minimal success. So let's try a few things. So it can become quite experimental and, you know, push the envelope a little bit more, which I think it's always tried to do throughout all of its history.
I think so. Yeah.
So can I ask, actually, sorry, just before we move on, and this kind of applies to what we're talking about, but I need to ask, how was it writing for somebody else, or writing from somebody else's materials? So you've written your own novel. That's all you, right? That's 100% you.
Yeah.
Now you've got to take somebody else's work, and it just happens to be Russell T Davies as well. So, and I think that relates to there wasn't a question on that. That's my question. There you go.
Yeah.
What is that?
that was definitely challenging. I found this whole experience to be like a massive learning curve, and it's weird. It's not because like I was sitting there. It feels strange to describe it as challenging, because at no point was I sort of sat there stumped, like with no idea where to go, because the whole plot was written for me. But it was more just like, okay, how do I approach this? And how the main balance for me was, how do I bring my own voice through this? Because I think that's important. Like, you don't ask somebody to do it unless you want them to bring their own voice. And I think that, as you guys were saying, that's like a massive part of the novelizations, is like, oh, what did the writer add? But then how do I respect, you know, the sanctity of Russell T Davies' writing? And I don't know, I found it very, very like a challenge in the best sense of the word. Like, I found it like thrilling and exciting to be like left alone with these characters, to just write them how I wanted to. But I was obviously very lucky in that the sort of scaffolding of the story and the dialogue even was just so good and written so well. But yeah, I found it interesting, and I think my writing process is very kind of like a lot of the time I just sit back and let the characters do what feels natural to them, and it honestly feels like they're almost telling me the story. And if you can build really strong motivations for characters, they'll just end up doing what it makes sense for them.
What they should do. Yeah, exactly.
But for this one, I kind of had to reverse engineer motivations because the actions were there, but you didn't get a full explanation of the characters' motives. And I think the script was so good because you didn't need it. It was very obvious just from the, sort of like the setup and their family situation and everything that we were shown about them. It became
that's what Russell's quite good at, actually, isn't it? Just with it's almost like an impressionistic style. He can just few sort of brushstrokes and you get everything, which is amazing.
Gosh, honestly, like even reading the script was just was like a masterclass in like character and balancing character and plot. And like I think the way you've described it is so true, because when I really got into the nitty-gritty, when I was trying to find details I could expand on to kind of flesh out like the character of Ruby, there weren't that many details, but I had an impression in my mind of what she was like and what her family was like. And I think that's so, like, I think that just shows someone who's been at this a while. They've done their 10,000 hours and they can really write, basically. And it was just so, it was so great to work with that. But yeah, it was definitely a learning curve to be like, okay, I know everything that happens, but why did this happen, or how are they feeling about it?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of having to do it, isn't it? Yeah. And
do you know what the funniest thing is?
Go on.
Is that I've written a bit of fan fiction in my time, and this almost felt like that, which feels a bit cheeky to say, but it very much was like, all right, we've got the canon events and we've got everything that we know is happening, but like, how is everyone feeling about it? And that's kind of like what fan fiction is, I guess, in the core of it. So I loved sort of getting to expand on that, and it felt very natural for me. But then it was definitely balancing like the urge to just go crazy versus like, right, this is a serious thing where I've got, but not that serious, where I've got to make sure that I'm giving, paying respects to the source material. Overall I loved it. I thought it was so fun.
That's brilliant.
That's fantastic. Can I ask how long it took you to... Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
How long did it take to write from beginning to end then?
The first draft took me a month, and then I had to, obviously with like other projects, then I had to edit it down. So I probably worked on the whole thing for about 3 months or so. But not long.
No, that's all right. It's pretty good going, actually. Because, I mean, it reads like... it reads very quick. It's got a really good pace to it. It was one of the reasons I read it so quickly
it must be,
I honestly couldn't put it down. It's been a long time since I've read a Doctor Who novel in that short space of time. That's literally just been able to focus on it. And on a PDF as well, on a screen, on my phone.
That's
my daughter was watching a football match last night, and I'm on my phone just reading this, and she's going, oh, yeah, go. And I'm like, yeah.
Whatever.
That's such a... Thank you for painting that picture. That's so lovely.
No, honestly, it was an absolute delight to read. I have to say, and, it absolutely belongs within the whole bookshelf of Target novels. And I can't wait to look at the actual thing.
I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Really massively, and because of that, I'm looking forward to reading the Principle of Moments as well. So
it has the same fast pace, definitely.
That's it. Brilliant.
So tell us a bit more about that. I was going to say let's go back to the beginning and find out what inspired you to get into writing. But tell us a bit about your book. Is that the first part of a trilogy? Am I right?
Yes. So to take it right back to the beginning, this is the first part of a trilogy, and it's something I've been writing for a while. So I've been working on this first book for now 7 years or so. So it's definitely like a labour of love and something that I've poured a lot of time and effort into. But yeah, it's basically just my like love letter to fantasy and space opera, but sort of coming from the position and viewpoint of someone who wasn't always represented in that genre, and who kind of felt the loss of like, wow, all these people are so amazing, but like I'm never there, I can never see myself. And it's almost like, when you're a kid, it's not, you don't think of it as an issue. You're just happy to be there and reading about these amazing stories. But I think it can really, there is a real loss there of never seeing yourself as the hero or seeing yourself as someone who can achieve these things. And it does just bring an added layer of joy and fun and like almost like vindication to it, because you're like, I can do these things. I can be that person. So I think as you get older, it's so important to be able to identify yourself with people who are doing amazing things and are valued and are heroic, and just like even like reading as a kid, like there would always be like the beautiful princess who's saved by the prince, whatever, and it's like that was just never me, and so I think that can be quite it can it's that thing about the danger of a single story that Chimamanda talks about a lot. Like, if you tell yourself the same thing over and over again, that becomes your story, and that becomes
your truth.
Exactly. And it's like, eventually you won't need books to tell you that you're no one, because that's just what you'll think. And I think that's so sad, and not something that I want to perpetuate in my own work, but something I want to take steps to kind of fix and heal. So I just wanted to write a story about like a strong black girl who's also vulnerable and scared, and just desperately trying to do the right thing. And she meets up with this time traveler character in the future, and they just go on this insane, wacky adventure. So that's kind of where the origins of that story came from. I started writing it when I was quite young, so it was definitely like wish fulfillment. And then I got serious about it and edited it a lot, and now it's published. So that's something I'm so grateful for.
That's awesome. How long did it take you to get it picked up and get published?
Well, this is interesting. So goes back to what I was saying before about stories that are really different having a hard time gaining traction within the industry to even make it into bookshops or to make it onto the big screen. And so it took a long time, basically. Half the reason that I've been working on it for so long is just because it was finished and done like within about 3 or 4 years. And then the other half of the time was just me trying to get it on shelves.
Trying to pitch it.
Yeah, and trying to pitch it. And do you know what? People were not interested.
Really?
They were not interested in the pitch. They couldn't understand it. A common rejection I would get is like, you're clearly a talented writer, but I have no idea how I would sell this to people, or I have no idea what the market is for this. And I'm like, the market is the same market that it is for every other fantasy book.
What does it matter what the the face of the story is when it's a good story?
Yeah, I guess the response was like, well, we know that there's a huge market for what Brandon Sanderson's doing, but this isn't really like that. Or there's a huge market for like books about the Tamora Pierce books, but this isn't really like that. And it's kind of like, okay, like, but I think if you read it, you would find that it's actually very similar to all those books, like in its true heart and soul. So yeah, people were really not interested. And then it's funny that we brought up Ben Aronovich, because he actually started a prize for underrepresented authors in science fiction and fantasy. He started a prize about that, and he did it with Adjoa Ando, who plays Lady Danbury on Bridgerton, and she was in Doctor Who. She was played Martha.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
And they sort of came together to create this prize and got a few publishers on board. But not many publishers were that on board with the prize either. In the beginning, there was one or two. I think it was one publisher, Gollancz, who have done a lot of the master works and published a lot of the old school sci-fi.
This is Gollancz, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. And they came on board with it, and I basically submitted to that, didn't think anything was going to come to it. Then I got shortlisted, and then I won it, which was just crazy. And it was such a hard moment to understand, because I was like, okay, I've won this prize, but I've had no success getting published through traditional routes. So it was like, obviously the work is worthy of winning above all the other applicants that got submitted. But like, if technically, the work that the judges deemed was the best couldn't even get through the front door, through like the back door of publishing, whatever, it's like, this is a dire situation. And I think the statistic that the prize used a lot was, I think, in the year, maybe like 2017 or 2018, before the prize was created, I think it was something like, out of all of the works published in the UK in the SFF adult space, I think something like 6 or 7 of them were by black writers, or by even, I think, just writers of colour, so not even like one specific demographic. Like, that was the whole offering, which is just, it's weird, because I feel like in this day and age, everyone's always saying, oh, diversity's great, and it is, but I think if some industries it is, and in others they've really been left behind. So I feel like that prize has done a massive thing for the diversity of SFF. So like, the prize has been running for like 5 years now. I would encourage anyone to apply to it. It's so good if you fit the specification. And we've had 3 book deals come out of that from people who might not have had much success otherwise or gotten an agent otherwise. I think one of the women who has won it, her name's Modupe, and her book A Song of Legends Lost, I think it's called, is coming out in a few years now, and she's been writing that book for 30 years or something.
Wow.
Without success of getting it published. I'm not sure if she tried to get it published, but I think she probably had. And the prize was her only route into publishing. And the book, I'm about to read it, it looks incredible, just like the kind of thing people are dying to read. So yeah, I won that prize, and that was how I got into publishing. So The Only Way was by Ben, who in this sense has been an amazing ally to the cause of diversifying literature. Putting, and also the prize had a massive prize money.
That helps.
He put his money where his mouth is, and do you know what I mean? And really made a difference to people's lives, because of the prize money, which was, I think, about the same size as my student loan at the time. I was able to I didn't have to get another job while I was I could just sort of ration it out for 2 years or so, and really, that really meant that I was able to work and write and not have to be, working.
Doing part-time somewhere,
Yeah, and it's not, that's removed a barrier that 99.9% of people it will never get that. So I was really lucky and wouldn't have been published without that prize.
That's fantastic. I was going to say, so obviously it changed your life enormously, and then so what's happening next? Is the book trilogy? You've got to finish that, and that's all. So that will come out, and So how's that all going at the moment?
So what's next is I've got a deadline for my second book at the end of March, which I think I have to make it. At this point, I have to. I've pushed it back. I've pushed it back a few times, partly because of the Doctor Who stuff, but I've also been invited to Gallifrey 1 in the US.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Meet the fans. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when they asked me.
Yeah, you can't turn that down. They'll invite us 1 year, won't they, Paul?
1 year. Yeah.
They will. Do you know what? When I go, I'll say these guys, they want to be in. You could do a live show. It would be so cool.
We'd love to.
That would be.
Yeah. And it was it's such a cool thing. But so that's another thing. That's in February. So I'm thinking, I don't know when I'm going to quite have time to do this book.
Yeah.
But
time is cracking on.
Yeah, but I'm quite far through a first draft, so I think it might have to be a bit in a shabby state. But I'm going to send it in, and then me and my editor can work on it. I've got a really good editor. And then after that, it's just got to do the next one, finish the trilogy. And fingers crossed they ask me back to do another novelisation. I really hope they do.
We had a question from Toby P on Twitter, actually. He said, would you write any other Who novels, original or adaptations?
Yes. If anyone is listening to this, yes, I would.
Esmie is nodding very actively.
Hopefully Shalice at the publishers will listen, so we'll see,
Exactly.
Let's get some more from you.
I would love that. I think they have I think they do want me to do some more. I've had a sense of that, but I'll never don't want to take anything for granted, so I'm just yes, please, I want to do it. I think I'd be quite daunted to do an original one for Doctor Who. That's a lot more my anxiety comes in. I'm like, there's so much space for it to go wrong. But I would definitely be up for the challenge. So I really hope that I get a chance to do that as well. That would be
brilliant.
So fun.
And it's quite interesting because you've got your own fiction brand, or really sort of coming online now, and the Doctor Who stuff as well. And I kind of wonder if you're when you're successful in creating your own stuff and your own little universe of characters and setups and everything else, how it must be quite interesting to then sort of move to Doctor Who, do a great idea for Doctor Who, and think I could use that for my own thing.
I know
that would be better for me there.
That's the thing. It's interesting. I think for me, I really do consider, I am just starting out, so I feel like at this point, ideas are eternal. You know what I mean? Ideas will come and come and come, God willing, whatever. But I think that I would do basically anything right now, and I just feel like to have worked on Doctor Who in any way is such an honour. They're probably one of the only sort of people I would give some ideas to and not feel upset. Like, oh yeah, you guys can have it. Also, I feel like it's paying it forward or paying it back because that show has inspired me in so many ways. So I'm like, okay, I guess you can have something.
Yeah, I think you're in a great position, you know, to have done the Who book and all that will bring, but to have your own, you know, Paul saying your own kind of world franchise, you know, and to be able to build that off and, you know, then go from there with other things. It's very exciting.
I think you're right. And I think the lucky thing is that because I've got sort of the time travel element in the Principle of Moments, I think there's a definite crossover in audience there. So I feel very lucky that I've been sort of like introduced to the Doctor Who audience in that sense, because I think there's a lot for them to love in my book.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and vice versa. Like, I even had a comment from somebody on TikTok that said, oh, I'll have to buy this novelization. Me and my son have just started. And she was like a black lady in the comment. She said, me and my son have just started watching Doctor Who. What a great show.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that just, it kind of, I was like, whoa, because I feel like so many fans have been watching for so long that I forgot that this might be some people's first introduction.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You know, they might have sat down on Christmas Day, just like I did, whatever, like 10, 15 years ago. And this is the first episode they've watched, which I think is amazing. And it's like, this is really bringing Doctor Who to a new audience and a new, just like a whole new world of people. Yeah. So I think it's
and your book might be the first Doctor Who book they've ever read.
Well, yeah, you know, there's a very good chance for some people it will be, which is incredible,
I feel totally honoured by that, and I hope it's... I think it might be a good first one, because as you said, it's quite fast-paced and not very long. So
it's very easy to get into. I love the writing style. You know, it's fantastic. Yeah. I don't. Jeff will tell you I don't give out compliments very often.
He doesn't. He's like a weeping angel, really. You know, from the inside out, built of stone.
Stone cold, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really glad about that, because you do worry, you know, when you come into something so established, like, oh my God, is it going to be like similar? And BBC Books sent me a few of the like novelizations. Like, they sent me such a wide range. Like, what one did I get? I got some very...
Oh, yes. Okay.
Oh, yes. We spoke to Stephen on the podcast, didn't we? Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, I read a few of them, and then I was like, right, I'm not going to read anymore, because I didn't want to be trying to be someone I'm not, or you know, something like that. I wanted to bring something that was me. Well,
you were hired for you, so you know you need to be you on it.
No, that was exactly my thinking. Like, if they wanted it to be the same as the other ones,
they'd have asked them.
They'd ask them, Because I mean, Lord knows these people are very good at what they do. So you know, I was like, let me try and do my own thing. So I'm very pleased to hear that you think I've succeeded at that.
Genuinely,
he is a hard critic and a big Target fan. So. Yeah,
you're gonna give me a massive head, but
I'll tell you honestly, if I can't get past like page 2, I'll always get past page 1, but if I can't get past page 2, then it's the end of it. And I think I've only ever thrown one Doctor Who book at the wall, so and that was an original one rather than a tie-in. But I'm not going to tell anybody what that is, because it's not fair.
Keep all the writers on their toes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll text you and ask you later to tell that.
You'll get the inside scoop.
Yeah, get the dirt on it. Yeah.
Bonus episode: which Doctor Who book did Paul throw at the wall? The grand reveal. We did that on YouTube. You know, like there's big spiky thumbnails. The grand reveal. Yeah. Paul hates this Doctor Who book. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Pimp that negativity, and then people will go, "This isn't your usual format, guys. What are you doing?" I wanted to ask you a little bit about Impact of Omission. Will you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So Impact of Omission's a funny thing. It came about in 2020. You know, very much spurred by the awful, you know, murder of George Floyd during that summer. And it was a friend of mine who I'd been in school with since we were really young, and we'd taken history A-level together. And we were just sort of talking about everything and the wider context, and we were talking about how God, like, we both remembered the moment when we were doing the Industrial Revolution, and there was like a really awkward moment where the teacher was talking about like cotton production or something, and about how that just created like a boom in the UK industry, and basically set us up to be the world power that we are today. And me and my friend, and she's white, and she kind of looked at me and I looked at her. We were both kind of like, I don't know about this. But then you don't feel confident enough to sort of put up your hand and open the discussion. And I was the only black girl in the class, and it would have been so just like, it would have really singled me out and been awkward. And at times I wish I'd done it, but we live and we learn.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. So then this was kind of our response to it, because we then sat back and thought about all the moments in school where it's like this presence of like a huge topic that is just totally omitted from the curriculum. And kind of like, we were talking about lies by omission, where you're not technically telling an untruth, but if you don't provide people with the full story of something, you are telling an incomplete and untrue version of events. Because for me, it is a lie to just say, oh yeah, we got really rich off the trade in cotton. That was it. And it's kind of like, well, it's not untrue, but I do consider
there's context, isn't there?
Yeah, it's not the whole story.
Yeah, the omission to be so huge that it does become a false summation of events, like it's not technically true. So we kind of thought about that, and then what we ended up doing was sending a survey to all of our friends and family, basically just to see if this was a widespread issue or if it was just our school. And we basically came up with this format that was just a click box exercise, and it basically just said, what have you been taught about in school? And it was done purposefully, but also it was just a way to gather data. It basically said, like, the Great Fire of London, the transatlantic slave trade, Henry VIII, the colonizer, the East India Project. And it was very clear, because you go click, no, yes, no, yes, no. And it just painted this very vivid picture of everything that had been left out of the curriculum. And the survey was shared really widely. And we ended up sharing it on social media, and it just went a bit crazy. And we ended up getting like 68,000 responses or something like that. And the demographics of the survey began to reflect the demographics of the UK. And we knew that it had gone really far when the pie chart that said were you state or privately educated reflected the whole, like, the statistics of the UK.
Interesting.
So we were like, wow, this has gone crazy, basically. And we had responses from all ethnicities. We had responses from every region of the UK, multiple responses from every region. And those began to reflect the actual geographic makeup of the UK. So then that ended up being like a massive sample size, bigger than most surveys ever get, because I think most surveys send it out to about 1,000 people from around the UK. So we had a sample size. So the information reflected was basically incredibly accurate, and that should still be on our website. But yeah, we then sort of made a petition to petition the government to include I think it was teaching on Britain's imperial past to become part of the mandatory national curriculum. And it went all the way, it got something like 250,000 signatures in like 2 days. It was one of the fastest growing petitions on the Parliament website's history. We went right to a debate in Parliament, which was so underwhelming, because you imagine all the MPs in like the benches like shouting at each other, and it was like video. We watched the live thing, and it was like in like a little classroom like room, and there was like 5 people there debating it. And the conclusion of the debate was that yes, this should be made mandatory. And then of course there's no one to hold politicians accountable, so it just got totally ignored, and it was hard to watch and hard to process.
Yeah, especially as you got that far and made that bigger impact and response to it.
Yeah, and it disillusioned me greatly with sort of the processes to get justice that are in place right now, which I think is honestly what happens when anyone tries to get any kind of response from the government or go through any kind of like court of law. Basically, you kind of think, oh god, this is so much worse than I thought it was. And yeah, that was interesting. And then a very nice thing that happened was then we were invited to like consult on and like appear in this documentary that Troy Deeney did, who's like a Premier League footballer. I had heard of him vaguely before this, and then my boyfriend was kind of like, do you understand what is happening right now? Like, who this guy is? And I was like, oh my god. And he was so lovely, and it was a really great documentary that took a sort of more personal approach, looking towards asking his friends and families what their experience in the education system had been like. And it was all just very illuminating, and I think raised the profile of the problem to a significant extent within the UK and brought a large amount of awareness to this issue of, everyone's being lied to by omission. And I think the most interesting thing about it is that the trust that we place in teachers and in schools to teach, I think it's such a huge responsibility to educate children. And I think it's such a shame that this trust is kind of being taken advantage of in a sense to kind of omit certain details, which I think should be spoken about. But, I do have faith that in the future it will be better and it will be spoken about more. I just hope that we can get there.
Yeah, well, things are changing all the time, aren't they? And I think
sometimes it needs a bit of energy. It needs something like this to kind of move it on. And no matter how frustrating it might seem now, if that energy continues and builds and gets support from big influences and social media, then it might actually gain some traction.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting because my daughter's taking A-level history right now, and she says, she's aware, of incomplete narratives, if you like, and quite often what will happen is her teachers, she has a conversation with teachers, like you do, and the teachers aren't allowed to express their own personal opinions or politics, or it's called politics. It's not really politics. It's humanity. Exactly. Do you know what I mean? But they're totally restricted, and if they do, somebody in the class will tell their mum and dad, who will then report it. It goes to the board of governors. They say this is against school policy,
you're
fired.
Yeah, you're fired.
I think there's such
to be
terror
careful
of that happening. And when you look at cases of sort of people teaching about LGBTQA plus rights, over in Florida and stuff like that, and as soon as something is mentioned, like about trans rights or being queer or anything like that, they're out. That's it. They're gone. And you just wonder, that's a system you're fighting against.
No, it isn't. It affects everyone. Like the fight to teach Black history is also a fight to teach like queer history and civil rights and all that kind of stuff. So it's very much like all of these things are interconnected. So I think a triumph for one would then open the gate for another. And
it just takes one, doesn't it, for then things to change. Yeah,
I think the day will come. I genuinely do. So I'm just waiting for that and hoping something changes.
I do. I've got all my faith in humanity is currently placed in Gen Zs. Right now, because what's happening right now is an absolute travesty. It really is. The mess that's been made of things is just unreal. And I'm so hopeful that Gen Zs with wider perspectives, with more understanding of who they are and who everybody else is, that it's actually going to power things forward.
I hope
to a much brighter future. I hope that's my optimistic.
Because I want my kids to have a better future, and I need your kids, Paul, to make that happen.
Oh yeah, they're a bit younger, aren't they?
Tell the girls to get on it. All right.
Tell them to get up and work.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh wow. So shall we play our little game to finish off?
Yes, we've got a couple of little quick fire questions for you here. So, where is the best hot chocolate you've ever had?
Oh.
Where's it from? That would be a better writing for that, wouldn't it?
There's a hot chocolate shop called Knoops in
Knoops.
It's Knoops or Noops. I think it's Knoops because he's like German or Swedish or something. The guy who made it. And they like shave like proper chocolate, and you can choose the percentage of chocolate, whether you want dark or milk or white chocolate. That's quite good. And there's a few of them. There's one in central London. There's one in a village called Rye, which I think was the first one. Oh my God, it's amazing. Like so good. Do you know what? This is so funny. Hot chocolate is something I'm actually so passionate about.
I know. Well, that's why I asked. It was on your bio, so it made me think.
I was like, this is like. When you asked it, I was like, this is the best question ever.
It's not just random. We do some research.
Yeah, did a bit of research here.
No, the best one I've ever had is in Rye, and oh my God, it was so good. It's just like delicious, because I always find that it's never quite dark enough, and I just picked the perfect one and added like just a horrible amount of sugar to it, and it was just
I'll have to remember that. Like, the best one I've ever had was in Timberline Lodge in Oregon, which is the hotel that The Shining is based on the exterior. And I sat there with some friends, and they got these, I don't know, 8-foot long windows which 6 feet of it is covered with snow, and huge marshmallows in it. It was a really great hot chocolate. So
Wait,
I remember
want
that.
to write this down. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. I need a pen.
Do you do the marshmallows in hot chocolate?
Sometimes, and I let them melt and I stir it in. So good.
Yeah, my kids love them in
What
hot
was the
chocolate.
name of the hotel?
It's Timberline Lodge, and it's like skiing and stuff there. And you go in there, and it's a great big kind of lobby. It's all wood, and it's roaring fire. It's a fantastic place.
And that's where they filmed the exteriors they used for the exteriors for the Shining movie. Right?
Yeah, that's
that's
Overlook Hotel. Yeah, that's what it's based on. Yeah,
that's a day trip when you're out in Gallywon.
Yeah, you know what? When you're in LA for Gallywon, you could fly to Oregon in probably an hour and a half, maybe.
Oh, wow.
So you could go visit Timberline at Mount Hood, and then fly back from LA. Yeah, check it out.
In the UK, it would be like maybe like a train, but in America, it's like you've got to get in a plane.
Yeah, that's it. It's like buses or trains over there. Yeah, just fly, interstate on the plane. It's
probably like that
so easy.
in Oslo, is it?
It is, yeah, but people don't really visit each other that.
We don't need to go visit, mate.
Yeah. Like,
I know she's out there. Everything's good. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god. Yeah. Okay. I thank you for telling me that. I'm gonna.
That's all right. If you go, let us know if you ever visit.
Yes.
And hopefully it lives up to my hype.
It is now on my life bucket
hot
list.
Chocolate list.
Yeah, genuinely.
Talking of lists, what's on your reading list at the moment then? Have you got time to read any other books?
You know what? The answer for a few months was no, and I've just started reading this book called A Marvelous Light by Freya Marske. And it's very much like I don't even know what time period it is. I just call every historical romance like a Regency romance. It's not a Regency romance. Yeah. It's set like they've got the tube and they've got I think they might have like very early cars. So I think it's
maybe
so
1880-ish.
Yeah, maybe like pre the First World War.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like this really, it's so good so far. It's about a like a baronet called Robin whose family has fallen into disrepair and he's got no money. So he's had to take a job at the Home Office. But, from the blurb it says, however, no one tells Robin that he'll be acting as a parliamentary liaison to a hidden society of magicians.
Ooh, yeah. There you go.
So
that's cool.
That's the kick.
Yeah, and so his like shadow secretary magical counterpart shows up, and it's a man called Edwin, and I think they're going to fall in love, and so I'm really excited.
Okay, that sounds fun. Good. Right, going to something a little bit different. Who is your favourite Disney villain? And I ask that because I know that you.
These questions are so good. I love Dr. Facilia from The Princess and the Frog. He's so horrible.
Yes.
That scene where he turns Prince Naveen into a frog with all the like voodoo like lights and the necklace and the I love that scene. Do you know what? I'm gonna watch it today. You guys, these questions are so good. I love that movie. I think he's so scary, but also like
he's kind of creepy cool, his design and the top hat. And,
because he's so cool as well. Like scary didn't really feel like the right word. He's so like and menacing, but just like he's so almost a bit pathetic as well because he's in the thrall of these shadow creatures. So you have a bit of sympathy for him, but not a lot because he's awful.
Yeah, that is a good film.
It's a good one.
Girls like that one.
I remember taking my girls to see that years when it first came out. They were quite young, and I think my youngest Freya was terrified at the time because of the shapes and the lighting and the movement, the dynamism of all of that. It's astonishingly good. It's one of their favourite films.
I'm just trying to think who I'd say. There's so many good ones like Mother Gothel in because she's so sad in that she wants to be beautiful all the time and locks Rapunzel away. We saw Wish recently, and King Magnifico was a brilliant villain.
I've not seen it yet. It's really on my wish list to watch. Did you think he was a good villain then?
Oh yeah, he was just scenery chomping,
brilliant.
And you could tell Chris Pine was loving it, and he's got a great song in it as well. This is the thanks I get. It was so good.
I think I remember that. I think I laughed because he was saying like, "I don't even charge you rent to live here." I thought that was
it kind of goes between like little kind of quippy lines like that, and you know the lyrics and stuff. And I took my kids to see it, and we really liked it. It was good. Yeah, he was great. Okay, but Gaston in Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, I hated him.
Such a douchebag, you know. But he gets, you know, his comeuppance at the end. You know, there's so many great ones.
He's
great.
Your kids are prime Disney age right now, aren't they, Jeff?
Yeah. My twin girls are 6 in 63 days. Alexa told them yesterday.
63 days.
Yeah. My son's 9. So yeah, they still like it. On the girls love the princesses and stuff, but you know they are kind of drawn a bit to like Rapunzel, you know, who's a bit kick-ass, Moana. You know, it's not just a sort of, you know, ball gowns and stuff, you know, you know, they know Jodie Doctor and stuff, and I've said this before, but when they were looking at my DVD shelf of Doctor Who stuff once, and one of the girls pulled out something. She said, "Who's this?" And I said, "It's Doctor Who," and it was David's Doctor, and she went, "Doctor Who's a girl." And I said, "Yeah, but it could also, you know, be a man as well. It's a girl, you know." And so they were,
crazy,
you know,
isn't it? That's amazing. I love that's been their experience. That's really cool.
Yeah. So that when we watched The Star Beast, which was the first sort of episode they've watched going out, you know, I had to sort of explain, well, you know, the girl one is gone now.
Yeah.
You know,
The girl one.
This is the Doctor now.
We're back to the man one.
Yeah. So.
I bet they were sad about that.
Yeah, I think, but then like they, particularly one of the girls, she really liked, you know, the Meep and the Wraith Warriors. Is that how you say it? And interestingly, I didn't tell you this, Paul, but there was some photos of the toys at Toy Fair this week.
Oh, yes.
And Phoebe happened to see it on my phone, and she recognised the Wraith Warrior. She went, "I've seen that on TV, haven't I?" And I thought, God, she only watched it once, but it lodged in her head. You know, and that was quite interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
My turn. Right. What are your top 3 sci-fi all fantasy films?
Oh my God.
This is proper fan question now, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, we're in these realms now.
It's a safe space here. There's no judgment.
No, the immediate, because we're on Disney, because I've got Disney on the brain. The first 2 that pop into my mind are Treasure Planet and Atlantis, the Disney films.
I liked Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet was my favourite film for so long as a kid. I was obsessed with that. And then I saw Atlantis, and that became my favourite film. And both of them together, to me, just are so representative of like what the genre can be, especially for kids just coming into it. Like it really teaches you definitely. Like the importance of like curiosity and adventure and like following your sort of like geeky interests, especially in Atlantis. And what's, if I choose a serious one for the third one, what would that be? Oh no, there's too many. I just popped into my head. I was like, I love Alien, I love Black Panther. God, there are so many. I might honestly say Into the Spider-Verse to bring a bit of animation. I love animation. If you can't tell, I
got that impression. Yeah.
And
watching Spider-Verse, I was like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
How do you make that film? And I mean, I have that sort of thought quite often. I'm a big Avatar fan, much to Paul's disgust. When I watch he doesn't like good films, but when I was watching the making of recently on the Blu-ray, I was like, I cannot fathom how you make something like that. It is beyond complex.
Like,
where'd you
begin?
begin?
It comes from nothing, like actually nothing, and then they get the actors in and they build it all over the face. I find it absolutely wild.
And like explaining to my kids not that long ago, you know, I think we were watching something on Netflix, and one of them said, "How do they make this?" And I said, "Well, someone draws it." Yeah. And then they draw it again, and it's photographed, and, you know, and explaining it, and you know, you could tell they were a bit like, "What?" You know, and it kind of blew their mind, and then they start asking things like, "Is something real?" You know, in what we're watching, you know, is it real people, or you know, because like ages ago, I remember watching maybe a Marvel thing with my boy, and thinking, he's not even questioning that the Hulk isn't real.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's
Like,
brilliant.
tell him, like...
Yeah, you know, and so yeah, kind of letting that all go for as long as it can is quite magic. So.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Well, that's the last of my questions for you. As always with our guests, I feel like we could just talk all day,
Yeah,
but
right.
I'm sure
You've
all
got things to
you
do.
know things to do. You know,
We can't keep
but
you.
Esmie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure
Definitely.
talking to you, and I've seen quite a few people on Twitter have already got their copy of Church on Ruby Road, and I'm sure there'll be reviews and reactions and stuff popping up very soon. And Paul, you've loved it, so I'm going to sit down tonight and start reading it.
5 out of 5 from me, guys.
Yeah, it's available now, everyone, don't forget.
Yay.
And we look forward to checking out Principle of Moments as well. That's out now, isn't it? So yeah, we'll pick that up and get stuck into that soon, and look forward to seeing what comes next from you, whether it's Principle of Moments 2 or more Who or whatever else you might be
we'll see.
secretly working on.
Thank you so much for having me. I've honestly had the best time, and it's been so fun. I've not done, I think I've only done one other podcast before, or two. And this is so fun, so I've enjoyed every second of it.
Oh,
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes, it's been a real
thanks,
pleasure.
Esmie.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
great, guys.
Fantastic. Esmie, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Doctor Who fans, look out for another Who Corner to Corner podcast coming your way very, very shortly. But for now, thanks to our very special guest. This is me, Paul, and Jeff, saying thank you to Esmie Jikiemi-Pearson. Yay!
I don't know why you're talking like that.
I don't know. It just sort of came out. I don't know. You can cut
Well,
it.
I
I'm
thought
gonna
it was
do-
quite professional. I was like, he's got the voice.
I wouldn't go that far.
going.
Professional is not a word we use to describe our podcast.
Got it.
We'll leave that bit to the guest,
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah.